Can probate be a smart estate planning tool? Most people think absolutely not. It's probate. Avoid it at all costs. And this is one of the things that I want to really educate folks about, is that if there's no benefit from probate, avoid it. If there is a benefit, then look into that benefit. What could probate do to help your heirs when they, or your beneficiaries, when they inherit from you? So probate. First of all, what is probate? It's a legal process to administer your estate. The will is filed with the court. The executor is appointed. In Washington state and in Idaho, it's a very simple process in that the court doesn't have to be involved. Once they sign the order that says this will is good and they issue letters testamentary to the executor to act, then the court has nothing to do with the probate after that. If there is no complications. Why would there be no complications? Because you have a good estate plan and you've set it up so that there won't be. So that's just a real brief discussion about probate. We have other videos where we talk in much more depth about probate. So why would probate be a good idea? What situations could arise when probate makes sense? Well, let's say you're a married couple and you are in the state of Washington. In Washington, we have an estate tax that is different than the federal estate tax. The federal estate tax right now is $12.06 million. In Washington state, our estate tax credit exclusion amount is $2.193 million, much lower, $10 million lower. So let's say you're a married couple and you have $4 million in assets. Hard to believe, but your house is worth a lot of money now and you've saved your money and you have $4 million. And if you don't have the right kind of an estate plan set up in Washington, what could happen is the first spouse dies. They didn't do anything to preserve that first spouse's Washington $2.193 million exclusion amount. They didn't have a will that said, we're going to take that $2 million and put it into a special kind of trust, a bypass trust, credit exclusion trust, a supplemental needs trust, some sort of trust that has tax planning advantages. Because if you don't do that, and now the second spouse dies, and let's say, yes, the estate is still worth $4 million, well, on the second spouse's death, the $2.193 million goes tax-free. Well, how about the remainder? The rest of that approximately $2 million, what happens to it? It is subject to Washington state estate tax. And that is going to cost tens of thousands of dollars, hundreds of thousands of dollars actually. So really a bad outcome. Why? Because the couple didn't think that they had that much money, or they didn't see an estate planning lawyer, or they saw one that was didn't bring to the table enough skills and expertise to tell this couple, you need to avoid the estate tax. There's a simple way to do it. Yes, there's going to need to be a probate to do that, but in Washington that probate is very simple. Yes, the probate is also going to cost money, but let's say that probate costs $5,000 or $10,000, and let's say that that probate saved $100,000, $200,000 in estate taxes. That's worth it. So that is just one example of why probate is a really good idea, to make sure that you don't pay unnecessary estate tax. There's another reason in Washington in particular that probate can be very beneficial to your estate. And you can be a couple, you could be a single person. I'm not talking about estate taxes now. I'm talking about protecting assets. So let's say you are a couple, and on your death, you want to make sure that you've set aside a nest egg for your surviving spouse. You're going to want to do a probate. If you just have it set up that on your death, your spouse inherits all your assets and there's no protections, what if your surviving spouse then needs long-term care? Or what if they have problems managing their money? What if creditors come after them? There's all sorts of what ifs, which frankly is what estate planning is about. So rather than not protect the money, you would do a probate. Your will is set up with an asset protection supplemental needs trust. On the first spouse's death, let's say this couple has $2 million. And it doesn't matter. Basically, we're just taking a number and dividing it by half. That's why I take simple numbers. So for this couple has $2 million, first spouse dies, their $1 million, their half of the estate will go into a trust for the surviving spouse. And whatever happens to that surviving spouse, the surviving spouse still has their own $1 million. But the $1 million that came from the deceased spouse is in a trust. That money will never be subject to estate taxes, creditors, spend down for Medicaid long-term care benefits paid for by the state. It can never be redirected from that surviving spouse to a place that the deceased spouse didn't want it to go. So this again is a situation where probate makes a heck of a lot of sense because you are protecting $1 million or all of the deceased spouse's share of this couple's estate. So there's a number of reasons, and I can't cover them all, but I want you to understand that it is important when you are sitting down and talking to your estate planning lawyer. Number one, ask them, are you also an elder law attorney? Do you know how to protect assets against not just creditors and taxes, but Medicaid? Will my estate planning, you should ask them, make sure that if my spouse, when I'm gone, if they need long-term care because of Alzheimer's or Parkinson's or any of the other reasons that people need long-term care, will my surviving spouse still have money and yet be able to take advantage of Medicaid state-paid benefits? The answer should be yes, that the estate planning and elder law attorney will definitely incorporate that into your plan. As I said, estate planning, it's all about the what ifs and protecting for the things that you don't think will happen, but they do end up happening. And if you have that type of relationship, that type of attorney, you are going to feel so much more at ease knowing that you've done everything in your power to make sure that your spouse will be taken care of when you're gone.